Hello! Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Dani, and today I'm gonna tell you about all the books that I read in February. If you watched my last book haul that I posted, the last video that I posted, you know that this is the second time that I'm filming this wrap-up because the first time it was all blurry. But when I first filmed it, it was the end of the month, and I actually ended up reading one more book, so it's good. We're having an updated version of my wrap-up. So in February I read 6 books. And I still did not complete my m&ms TBR because I read 2 of those books were not on there. But I read a total of 1,964 pages. I listened to about 13 hours of audiobook, and my average rating was awful. But we'll go through each book. First book that I finished in February was A Clock of Stars by Francesca Gibbons. This is a middle grade fantasy about 2 sisters who follow a moth. It's called The Clock of Stars, the Shadow Moth. They follow this moth and they find a door that leads to another world. So it's a portal fantasy. They go through this portal, they find themselves in this magical land that's being, like, every night they're attacked by some weird creatures, and at the same time that they're trying to help these people that they meet there, they're also trying to go back home. It's a very beautiful book. There are a lot of illustrations, and I thought it was a lot of fun, but I don't know if it's going to be the most memorable book that I've ever read. I feel like it was very episodic in a middle grade way, which usually I don't mind so much, but I think there were too many elements of the story that didn't matter as the story went forward. So they were just introduced in that chapter for that particular reason, and then we move on and we don't talk about that again. But I still had a lot of fun, so I would still recommend if you're looking for a middle grade fantasy. I'm just not sure that I like portal fantasy as much as I thought. I will keep trying, I'll keep reading them, but yeah, this was not the bad, like, it wasn't the most memorable, like I said, but it was a lot of fun. So I don't know, I gave it 3.5 stars and I still recommend it, but I don't know if I will continue the series. Then the second book that I read in February was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I actually listened to this on audiobook because the copy that I have is in Portuguese, and if you've been here for a little bit, you know that I have a little bit of a trouble with some translations, so I just don't trust most of them. This is also a really beautiful book with illustrations. So I did go back and forth in the book and the audiobook just to look at the illustrations more than anything. And if you don't know what this one is about, it was published a while ago and it's kind of like a very popular YA fantasy. It was published in 2015. So this is about Mare. She is a girl who has red blood, and in this world that means that she doesn't have powers and she has to live kind of like a more poor life than the Silverbloods who have everything, and they're the aristocrats who have like actual powers and they rule the world. She finds herself in a situation where she is actually, she gets a job for the Silverbloods, and she finds out that she actually has power. But that doesn't make sense because she's a red blood, so how come she has power? That could turn the whole society upside down. So the king, the royalty here, tell her that she has to pretend to be a Silverblood and she has to live like a Silverblood and pretend she's like this lost cousin. And she goes from there and she trains on how to be a noble person and all of that. Again, I had a lot of fun with this one. I think you have to go, like, if you still haven't read this book and you're thinking about it, I would suggest going into it when you just want a fun ride and you're not worried about tropes, about cliches, about love triangles, love squares, or whatever is going on here, because there's a lot of that. I think it's a very expected story as well because of the time that it was written. It was clearly a book of its time, so I don't know if it aged as well, but it was still a lot of fun. There are people with superpowers and it's very action-packed, and I enjoyed it a lot. I might continue the series through audiobook. The audiobook was really good. I would definitely recommend it. I don't know, I don't think I would buy the books, and it's not going to be a priority by any means, but I did have a lot of fun. So I still recommend it if you haven't read it yet, but just don't go into it with the mind of YA fantasy written nowadays, because nowadays they're so much different. Like, if you've read something from 2015 and from 2020, you know how different they are, and I think this has its merits for sure, even now, for being a fun superpower fantasy. The next book I read in February was Game Changer by Neil Shusterman. I have a whole reading vlog just talking about this book and the next one that I'm gonna mention, because they were my most anticipated books of 2021. Neil Shusterman is one of my favorite writers, my favorite authors. I really want to read everything that he writes. I've given 5 stars to most of his books, but this was a 3-star. This is a YA contemporary fantasy sci-fi at the same time, more on the contemporary side, I would say. Although there are fantastical elements here, they are not as important as the contemporary side. And it tells a story of Ash, who is in high school, and every time he hits his head very hard, like playing football, he gets transported to another dimension, in which things are a little bit different than they were in his previous dimension. And sometimes very, very different, but he still has his same family, his brother, his friends, like all the same people still exist, but something changed in the world. And the point of this book is that Neil Shusterman wants to put this character, who is a white, straight male, in a position to confront a lot of biases and a lot of wrong things in society. And that's the idea, that's what he's going for here. And in that point, for me, I don't know if he succeeded as well as I wanted him to. When he starts to confront a new topic and a new dimension, I feel like the previous topic gets pushed aside. There are wrong things in the world that are there because of what's happening to him, and he kind of doesn't care anymore because of this new thing. But my main issue with this book was that we had to hear everything from the mind of a male, white, straight boy. And I didn't like him. I think he was trying to get past a lot of the things that he had previously thought, but I don't like him. Like, I don't like this character, and I don't know, like, I don't think he was as successful as he could have been in the story. This could have been a whole series in which in each book he would go to a new dimension and like try to deal with that specific topic. I think that would have been better, because it's a short book and there's a lot packed in here. It's still one that I would like to reread at some point, because I don't know, I think I might have been too harsh. Although a lot of the reviews agree with me. I'm not very away from what people are talking about, but I still would want to reread it and see if maybe I was just focusing on the wrong things, because overall the idea of this book is good and I really like his writing still. So I would reread it, I think, but I'm not sure how I feel about how he dealt with these topics. And then the next book I read for that same vlog was A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Novelle. This is an adult sci-fi / historical fiction, and it's about these two women, mother and daughter, who are trying to help humanity go to the stars, get out of our planet. Their whole family has this history of like why they have to do that, and I'm not going to go into that too much because it would be a little bit of a spoiler, but also I don't think it's the main focus of the book. The story starts right around World War II, when all the countries, Russia, United States, Germany, are kind of in racing to go to the stars. So from there, it's literally the story of the beginning of the space race and how these women were kind of influencing the space race. But this whole book is actually like a real history of what happened. After the book is finished, there's a whole chunk of his research and how everything happened in real life and how he decided to incorporate those things in the book. And because this was so stuck in real history, I thought it was very boring. It took me a while to read this book, and it's really short. And I just, like, the second half of it, I enjoyed it a lot more because we had more action in it. The first part, I was just very bored. We didn't get to see so much about these characters, and it was just a lot of words about rockets and things that I don't understand. I think it was too stuck on what the real history was, with real characters, like people who actually existed in history, and that didn't give a chance for the book to be more interesting. But now that I know what he wrote in the end of the book, about his research and how all of this actually happened and how all these people are real, I kind of want to reread it also. I think going into it knowing it's more of a historical fiction with some sci-fi sprinkled into it, rather than thinking it's going to be a full-on sci-fi, which was what I thought it would be. Thinking historical fiction, I would like it more. So I definitely do want to continue this series. and when the second one comes out, I might just reread this one knowing what I know now, and I think I'm going to enjoy it more. And I want to see where he's going from here because I have no idea. And then the next book that I read in February was Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. This was very kindly sent to me by HarperCollins Canada. Thank you so much for sending this. I'm very happy I got to read this very anticipated release from 2021 as well this month. And I think this is exactly what you should expect from a YA fantasy written nowadays. It's very unique. This tells the story of these two women. The first one that we meet here is the queen's daughter, and she's also part of an underground society that's trying to overthrow the queen because they don't agree with her decisions about how to rule this world. There's this event here in the beginning of the book that they're trying to make it so that doesn't happen because they put a bunch of teenagers to die so the magic will protect, so like blood magic will protect the world. And she doesn't agree with that. She wants to stop that thing from happening. And the second main character here is a girl who spent her whole life in prison, and she manages to get out of prison, and she's actually out for revenge and justice because she is part of the family who was ruling this land before this queen overthrew those people. The story is inspired by Jamaican culture and folklore, which makes it very unique with a very, very cool magic system that's a little bit confusing at times, and I think in the sequel it will probably be better, like you get a better sense of how that thing works. But it is a cool magic system with that culture wrapped around it, and I really love these characters. I really love most of the characters in this book, really. The whole government is ruled by important, strong women, which is really awesome to see. There are maybe 2 important male characters in this book, which is just a nice thing to read about. We alternate between the point of views of these 2 characters, and I felt like they were too similar for me that sometimes I would have to go to the beginning of the chapter and see who was talking, especially when they were both in the chapter. And I thought also that, again, it's a very personal taste, but the book was very slow until the last quarter where everything happened. The synopsis of the book, there's more to the synopsis than what I said, because I think what it's written here gives it away too much, because what it says in the synopsis happens in like half of the book. So I was like just waiting for that to happen so the story could actually start, and I thought it was just very slow getting there. And one other thing that bothered me a little bit was that as much as this magic system and this world building is very, very unique and interesting, I felt like the writing focused too much on those things, and like every paragraph had to have a word related to that magic system, to that world building, and that just took me out of the immersion a little bit, and like I was all the time aware that I was reading about this world and not like inside the story itself, if that makes sense. I would still definitely recommend this book if you're looking for a cool, unique YA fantasy with awesome female characters, cool magic system, just a very different thing from what we see a lot of in fantasy. So definitely I would still recommend this. But for me, it was like 3.25 stars, mostly because of the pacing. I thought it was very slow, but I'm a person who likes more fast-paced books. So in the enjoyment aspect of the reading, for me, it was a little bit lower. And then the last book I read in February, that I read in the last day of the month, and it was actually on my March TBR, is Fullmetal Alchemist Volume 12. I can't say a lot about it because it's Volume 12, so we're very far ahead in the series. But this is one of my favorite series ever. It's a manga, that's why I read it so fast. And I really like the characters here, I like the story. I think it's very funny, it's sad, it's everything that I would want in this type of story, exactly the type of humor that I enjoy. So I'm really loving getting to know all these characters and getting inside the story because it's a lot of fun. So this was a 5 stars. This was the thing that actually like bumped up my average star rating for February because it was a 5 stars, and everything else was below 4 stars for me. And those are all the books that I read in February. Let me know what you read, and if you've read any of these or if you're very interested in reading any of these books that I mentioned. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and thank you so much for joining me. Bye!